please, dear graduates, find a way to pursue it. In the case of that little baby with CF, the only logical explanation for me that could explain the appearance of bacteria in the airway of an otherwise healthy child was that an unknown local antimicrobial mechanism had to exist in humans, and moreover, that putative mechanism wasn't working properly in cystic fibrosis. 10 years later, when I was on the staff at the National Institutes of Health, I was still perplexed by the clinical experience presented by that little boy. My work at that time was focused on an esoteric area of molecular biology, which required my use of the oocytes of the African clawed frog. One day, I realized quite suddenly that the frogs whose ovaries I had removed surgically and that I had returned to their murky tanks after suturing healed without infection, without the need for antibiotics. Within minutes of that gee-whiz moment, I was inspired to begin some serious experimental investigations as to how this could be. Within 3 months, I discovered the existence of antimicrobial peptides in the skin of the African clawed frog. I had a real explanation for why that baby in Boston could not clear the bacteria in its airways for the first time. Perhaps, I thought, antimicrobial peptides are normally produced in the human airway to prevent the growth of bacteria inhaled from the oral cavity, and that in CF they are ineffective in maintaining local sterility due to the abnormal salt and water content of the bronchial fluid. This indeed is now understood to be the case. Dear graduates, in many ways, that little baby with CF in Boston, who I saw as an intern, changed the course of my career. Claude Bernard, the greatest of the early physiologists, and is one of my historical mentors. In his book, An Introduction to the Study of Experimental Medicine, he writes, "There are two sides to science. On the one hand, what is already known, and on the other, what remains to be known. In what we know, all physicians are more or less equal. It is within the darker, more obscure regions of medicine that great physicians are recognized. They light up phenomena hitherto obscure and carry the field forward." As graduates of this great medical school, you will all do your very best to serve those who seek your care. That is your primary responsibility as physicians. However, as Bernard suggested, you all have the chance to light up phenomena, whether your career takes you to the bedside or to the lab bench. Let me start you off with a few random observations that have continued to bother me since my graduation from medical school and remain, surprisingly, unanswered to this day. Perhaps it will be you who will provide us all with the answers to these deep, and I believe really deep secrets. One, and don't laugh on this first one, think about it. How is it that you can bite your tongue and it heals without infection? Why does the rheumatoid arthritis patient present with symmetrical joint involvement? What guides the symmetry? What causes a child who seems so normal to suddenly develop schizophrenia as a young adult, sort of out of the blue? Why does cancer almost never develop on the upper surface of the back of the tongue, in contrast to the tip and front, sides, or the underbelly, or the floor of the mouth? And 5, why is cancer of the small intestine so rare, almost unheard of, compared with the oral cavity, the esophagus, the stomach, or the colon? Perhaps you too carry tantalizing, unexplainable observations that you can add to my list of questions. Realize, dear graduates, that despite all you have learned about the human body, it remains by and large a mysterious thing, with many secrets yet to be discovered. In spite of our marvelous technologies and the vast body of knowledge at hand, profound mysteries still remain. And friends, some of you will unravel those mysteries, make those discoveries, and possibly, very possibly, change the way we now practice medicine. So go forth and stay curious, stay self-doubting, realize that you now have the opportunity to deepen our knowledge and to revolutionize medicine. And remember, not only will civilization thank you, but also you will certainly make Georgetown proud. Thank you.
Dean Mitchell will present the graduates, assisted by Assistant Dean Cameron Jones. President John DeGioia will confer the degrees, assisted by Registrar John Hammett.
Dr. DeGioia, I'm proud on behalf of our faculty and staff to present an exceptional class, the 160th to continuously graduate from our School of Medicine. This class helped us create a transformational new curriculum, the first truly transformational curriculum since Patrick Healy was in your position and Robert Rayburn was in mine. We were the fourth in the nation to require 3 years and exams. I would gently remind the class of 2012 that the class of 1878 also did not always enjoy the process. It was Robert Rayburn also, our dean in 1878, who went on to be dean of a new medical school here in Washington at Howard University in a tumultuous time in our nation. The class of 2012 is also capable of leadership and philanthropy. Under Kathy Sweeney and Chris Petrilli, they became the third graduating class in the history of the university and perhaps in the history of other medical schools in the nation to have 100% participation in their senior class gift. Thank you. They've impacted philanthropy, social justice, and the nation's capital also in their process. This class provides us a good cross-section of the nation. Among the 193 graduates today, there are 101 men and 92 women. The youngest is 25, the oldest is 34. 34 states are represented, led by California, New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and the District of Columbia. 38 members of the graduating class have a graduate degree. There are many members who come from families that have an immediate family member dedicated to the healthcare field. Just over 15% of the class will have one of these physicians who are parents come forward during the ceremony to hood their graduate. The graduating class will also be hooded by following members of the faculty. Father Dr. James Duffy, S.J., Associate Dean for Clinical Education and Assistant Professor of Medicine. Rebecca Evangelista, Associate Professor and Director of the Medical Student Education in the Department of Surgery. Dr. Princy Kumar, Professor of Medicine, Division Chief of Medicine, Senior Associate Dean for Student Affairs. Maria Marquez, Assistant Professor of Pediatrics and Pediatric Clerkship Director. Eileen Moore, Assistant Professor of Internal Medicine, Assistant Dean for Community Education and Advocacy. Dr. Stephen Schwartz, Associate Professor of Family Medicine, Associate Dean for Clinical Informatics. Dr. Cheryl Sistrunk, Associate Dean for Curriculum and Assessment and Associate Professor of Medicine. And Dr. Russell Wall, Professor of Anesthesia, Senior Associate Dean for Admissions and Student Services. I will ask family members who are serving as special hooders for their graduate if they would begin to make their way to stage left as you were instructed earlier at this time. Our staff will assist in getting you to the stage at the appropriate time for your graduates. And now, Dr. Joy, without further delay, the class of 2012.